Hi, in this video, I'll be showing you the basics and anatomy of type. So I'm just going to cancel all this, but before I cancel all this, this is where we're arriving at. We're going to be talking about type, typeface, fonts, font family, font size, the classes of type or type of typefaces, and, the character, kerning, leading, and all that, need to know. And also, yes, the anatomy of typography. So yeah, but before I jump in fully, I'm just going to be referencing the people that I got these images from. So this is gotten from Marek Skudalarek, if I pronounce it right. It's spelled Szkudlarek, right? Marek. Yeah, it got this image. I got this image from him, WordPress.com. I just, Google search and got that. And then also I got this from Society of Fonts, right? Society of Fonts, right? So they provide. I saw that on Google, and then got this from the Interaction and Design Foundation, right? Interaction and Design Foundation. And yes, of course, I got this from the Anatomy of Typography I think it's from the same Interaction and Design Foundation. So having mentioned that, let's just kick in and start the main video for today. Yes, and like you all know, as you can see, I'll also be explaining how to use basic golden ratio to tell the size of your type, of your typeface, of your text. It is very, very important to know how to work with that. All right, so let's move on to the main video of today. So I'm just going to create a new file and just add an illustration, and there we go. So the very first thing I would like to do is to type the word typography. Typography. All right, typography, like so. So let's just make the basic stuff. So a lot of people get some things, misinterpreted. Some people say type is the same thing as font and all that. I'd like to just make some things clear. So we have font as probably the main name, right? And under font, we have font style. We also have font type or family. And then we have font size, right? And then this also can be equated to typeface. So once you hear, what's the typeface? What's the typeface? You're talking about the font type or the font family, right? But most people say, what's the font? Can you use this font for me? Can you use that font for me? It's just something that I'll prefer to use, font family or typeface, because that's the right thing to say, or those are the right words to use to describe the font family as its word. All right, so the next thing we'll be talking about your tracking or kerning. We'll also talk about leading. We'll talk about character. What else? So basic stuff I'll be talking about, because there are still other things we may need to talk about, like paragraph. So under paragraph, we can talk about alignment. We'll talk about indentation. We'll also talk about the types of type as its way, right? The types of type. So these are the basic things that we'll be talking about. So let me just extend my artboard right here. Just know that this may be a bit boring, but it is very, very essential for you to know these things, especially as a graphic designer. So I'll be starting from the type of fonts, right? But before we go there, I would like to explain that fonts or typefaces or font families are very crucial in your design. You need to know that fonts help you to communicate emotions and ideas. And yes, and also the usage of font or type is greatly dependent on why you are designing, who you are designing for, what industry you are designing for, what kind of emotion you're trying to communicate. So it is very important to know all those. So I'm just going to copy from my old documents. So this, I'm going to be copying this so that we have the cursive fonts, we have display fonts, we have monospace, we have sans serif, we have serif, and we have slab. And these have different uses at different times. For example, your cursive fonts are majorly for aesthetics. Right? This, as the name implies, majorly for display, right? Display, using them for posters and flyers. They can be also a bit decorative, but majorly for display. You don't use them for magazines and all that. The monospace or your sans serif are majorly used for your magazines, your editorials per se, and for also blogs on the internet, so that for easy readability, that is why you would use this. And there's also your serif too. So these guys are majorly used for readings, right? Things you need to read stuff. So it's very important to be in between this, right, for ease of reading for your audience. And then also, they have similarities. So this, for the sans serif, we have bigger and bolder stems, right? And then for your monospace, we have thinner stems and thinner bridges or connectors, as it were. And then for your serif, we have smaller slabs. And then for your slab, we have bigger slabs like so. And it has, there's a way your capitals, for example, the A, the apex of your A has a slab on top, while for your serif, there's no slab on the apex of the A. I think I'll just change my color right here to red. So this is the major difference between your serif and your slab serif. And then for your sans serif and your monospace, this is the major difference. The width of your stem and the cups and the bowl, or whatever you call it, can be called cup. It's a cup and called bowls, right? So the width is actually the difference between the two, but both can be used interchangeably, or both can be used for, text, long read texts. And your display fonts, they have, a bit of sans, they have a bit of slab, they have a bit of sans serif and monospace mix, whatever. So all you just need to know is what typeface is appropriate for what. So let's move on to, okay, well, we have samples here before we move on. We have Calibri is a monospace. Monospace, of course, monospace. Arial is a monospace. Poppins, Helvetica, they are actually sans serif. And then we have other serif fonts. So let me change this to an Helvetica. Let me just make it Helvetica bold, like so. So there you have it. Then the next thing we'll be talking about is actually the anatomy, right? The anatomy. But before we even go there, let's talk about the difference between your font style, your font type, your font family, and also your font size. For example, your font style. Let me just pick this and put it right here. And then you can just don't duplicate this like 3 times. All right. So your font style. Your font style talks about the style of your font as it is. So talking about the boldness, the italics, the underlining, your condensed font, your extended font, your semi-bold and all that. So for example, if I'm going to talk about font style, let me make this 6. So here we have Helvetica bold. Here we can have Helvetica bold italics. Here we can have Helvetica oblique, right? So it can be interchangeably used, oblique or italics, right? Then we also have Helvetica. Let me look for an Helvetica bold extended, right? For this guy. Then we can have Helvetica heavy. can make this the heavy Helvetica. Let's go for Helvetica. Okay, let me pick a condensed light condensed. We have heavy. So that talks about your font style. That's the boldness and the heaviness and all that you have, right? And then we have the Helvetica normal. So basically, the heaviness of your text, the normal size, talks about your font style. And then we now have your font size. I guess you know that already. Your font size talks about your font size, as it were. So this is bold, italics, and underline. This talks about your point, measured in points. So we can have 20 points, we can have 10 points, and so on and so forth. So this, if we're going to ask, okay, what style is this? Font style. We know that this is Helvetica Black Extended. So if you're being asked what typeface or font family, we know that it's Helvetica New, right? And then what size? We know it's about 92 points. That is the size, or basically rounding it up to about 93 points, right? So that's about your font style and the font size. And of course, your font type or family is the typeface, which is Helvetica New. So if I'm coming here, so that's your typeface. So the next thing to go for is, we'll be talking about the type or typography anatomy. So I'm just going to use this and we'll work with this, right? So moving on, we have the typography itself. And from this explanation, you'll be able to understand the things that you need to understand when it comes to typography. But I'll be expanding on some other things as we move right here. So the very first thing is the baseline of the text. So this is your baseline right here. So your text baseline. This is your text baseline, like so. So your baseline is an invisible line where all the letters cease, right? As simple as that. So, but sometimes, yes, we have extenders like this or descenders like your P's and your Y's, but basically it's more of an invisible line where all your text sits. And then we also have the cap line or cap height. It's an imaginary line that marks the upper boundary of all your text letters. And yes, of course, some lower cases too, right? For example, we have a capital T right here, and we have a small h right here, but they still share the same cap height, right? So your cap height is the upper boundary of your text. It refers to the height of capital letter fonts, blah, 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 blah. And then we also have your maximum X height. So your maximum X height, or the median, right, is the vertical direction for all lower cases. It's also an invisible line, right? It is the distance formed between the baseline and the mean line of the body of characters in lowercase, right? So for example, this is your median right here, where that is your median line, or your maximum X height. It is the maximum readability. So a designer should always select a typeface that has a maximum X height for ease of readability. Then we also have your lowercase ascender. The lowercase ascender, for example, is the H. So this is an ascender for lowercase, because it beats the median. So it's high above, and it's also sharing the cap height with your capital letter T right here. So we have letters like your H as seen here. We have like your K, right? Your K can also be like this. Your K can also be like this. So they are sharing that height, that ascender height. It is the upward vertical stroke, like I said, mostly founded on lowercase letters that extend above the median. So the next is the descender in typography. So the descender is that downward vertical stroke, generally found on lowercase letters. Again, it extends below the baseline. So like you have your Y, you have it stilled right here. You have your Y, you have your P, has its own descender right here too, right? So your descender is, you can call it the tail or the descender as long as it descends below the baseline. And then we have bars and crossbars. So this typography doesn't have any text that has a crossbar. That's why I'm going to bring this in. This guy, okay, I'm going to use this to explain instead of bringing it in. So we have your crossbar. So alphabets like your A has a crossbar, like the H, like the capital H has a crossbar right there. So it is the enclosed horizontal stroke that joins the stem. It is mostly found in your A and H. Then we have your round or closed or bold. Your bold, for example, are majorly found in your letters like the C letters, like the P letter, the D letter, the B letter. For example, you see this is a bold right here. This is also a bold right here, and your Q, your O. This is a bold right here, as described here. So, and then we also have the shoulder. The shoulder is found in small letter M's and N's. Then we also have your cross-stroke typography. So your T's, your F's have cross strokes across them. So they're making for, so we have your T having this cross stroke. They call this, like I said, arc or shoulder. Then we have the apex. We have the apex of your type. Like I said, it may look a bit boring, but it's just important for you to know these things so that you're not being lost when you have the need to choose type for whatever it is you're doing. We also have loop. We also have the loop. So this is the loop. It is very important to know that your G, the small letter G, has a loop. So that's the loop, and this is the link. So link and loop for your letters. We also have ligatures and decorative characters. For example, your P can be linked this way, right? And ligatures and decorative characters. Your F and J can be linked, or maybe your G and R can be moved this way, to give you that effect of, ligatures or decorative characters. But basically, when two or more characters are connected to form another character, primarily maybe a decorative character, then you call that ligature. Most times, your cursive fonts have ligatures, right? For example, if I zoom into this, so we have ligatures right here. The cursive fonts have, ligatures. Then we also talk about typography shoulder, which I've mentioned earlier. Your H has a shoulder. They call it shoulder or arm. And then we also have the stems. So your T has a stem. Your P has a stem. Your R has a stem. P, your H has a stem, right? Those are stems. Your stems are straight lines that are majorly vertical in your type. And then we have terminal. That's the end point of your text, of your type, right? Of your character. And we also have the arm, like your T, like the arm stretched out like so. Then for the A, I mentioned the other time that we have apex, right? So these things are interchangeably used, right? You don't have to actually understand everything, but there are some basic things you need to understand, like your descender, like your loop, your bold, what serif means, what sans serif means, your ascender, your arm, your stem. These are basic things to know. Then let's move to spacing, which is kerning or tracking in typography. Kerning or tracking in typography. So what is kerning in typography? It is simply the space between two characters, as simple as that. And then what is leading? So, okay, before I go to leading, tracking and kerning have the same meanings. Then let's move on to leading. Leading is the space between two line text. For example, you will have two texts on two different lines. Your leading is the distance between both of them. So for example, this lorem ipsum text, your leading is the space between line 1 and line 2. This is your leading line 3 and line 4, and so on and so forth. So let me just explain how that works. So for your leading, I can decide to click, I'm going to click on this, right, to set the leading. So the more I increase, the more the space. And then the more I reduce, the lesser the space. So more leading, so you should be able to understand the right form of leading to use to enhance reading for your audience. And also your kerning or your tracking, the distance between two texts. So for example, I can decide to set more distance right here. So the more I go, the more, so if I'm going to set this to about 500, so we're going to have more spacing. So now let's go to how to use the Fibonacci ratio or the Gaudian ratio to determine the right sizing for your text. So next thing to do is, let's return that back, right? So, and let's have our word typography. So let's come to, let's have this typography right here. Let's increase this. All right, so the very first thing to do is to make sure that my text is well justified. So, but before we even go to, the Fibonacci number and all everything, let's work on this. So in our open type, we can decide to justify to the left or to the right or to the, last aligned left. So I'm going to do that so that I'm going to have something presentable by the right side of my text. Another thing to do is to make sure that we have, our paragraphs well, spaced out. So one more thing also is to make sure that I align my text to each other. So I'm going to bring out my ruler, do this, using my typography, the main heading as a reference, and do this too. I'm just going to come here. Exactly. So, all right, so my text should start here. And then, since it's an area type tool, just going to do that. So another thing is to remove, if necessary, the hyphenation. So we won't have all these dashes right there. So I'm going to remove the hyphenation, and then we have something unhyphenated. Then the next thing to do is to look at the readability. So this is bold, black italics. Again, this is more of what I want people to read, and this is what we want to be the main topic. So I may not have to use a black italic for that, but probably maybe just go with a basic medium like so. So now let's properly size our text. So let's select typography and look at the text size. It's about 92. So let me just make it 93 and click OK. So that is 93 points. So the next thing to do is to find out what exactly is my Gaudian ratio number. And the Gaudian ratio number is it's actually 1.168. That's the Gaudian ratio number. So what this means is that this should be 1.168 lesser than this when divided. So let me explain. So this is 93 points. So what we're trying to do is 93 points divided by 1.168. So I'm just going to, slide in my calculator right here. You don't have to do this every time, but 93 divided by 1.168. Then we have 79.623. So that's 79.62. So the size for this should be 79.62. Now watch, 79.62. So that's really big, right? Then we go again dividing 79.62 by 1.168 because it's a ratio division. So let's divide it again by 1.168. We have 68.170. It's still rather big. And then let's keep doing that until we get to a very sizable size. So divided by 1.168. That's the third time. So let me just keep doing that. That's 49.49, 4236. So 31.36. Let's try that. So 31.36. So we are still really, really big. So let's keep going down. 26.84, 22.98, 19.68, 16.85, 14.42. That's 14.43, right? Rounded it up. Let's do 14.43. 14.43. And then this is a very fine size. Let's see if we can do one more. That's 12.35. Let's go to 12.35. 12.35. So that's a good way to size your text when we're talking about. So now this size is about how many times? About 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. About 13 times the main heading. About 13 times the main heading. So if this guy is 93, then this guy is what? 12.35. So there's a correlation between these two. So if you really want a visual balance in your typography or in your design, this is what you should do and consider when it comes to your typography. So always remember, it is very important to know your type anatomy and the type of font family to use for each and every design, because each and every design have different audiences. Remember to subscribe to see more of this if you really, really want to know more in-depth stuff about graphics design and visual communication. See you in the next video, and bye for now.